So thank you all for being here with us all this morning. This is great. You treasured through the snow, and we're going to learn about some leadership development. So we are all leaders in our own way. I am a certified behavioral consultant with the DISC assessment. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But just to give you a little bit of background on myself, I moved to Cincinnati area about 4 years ago, and from West Virginia. I grew up in a family of small businesses, and most of those business owners struggled. And I thought, no way, I'm not going to do that. It was anywhere from restaurants to CPA firms to retail stores, contractors, you name it. And I didn't want anything to do with it. So after I got my bachelor's and double major in management and marketing from University of South Carolina, go Gamecocks, I then jumped into corporate America. So I worked for Halliburton, Compaq, which is now Hewlett-Packard, and a couple of other corporate entities, until my dad called one day and said, hey, I need you to help me put my business back up on its feet. Can you come help me with that? And I thought, oh gosh, how do I tell dad? How do I tell my dad, right? So my husband at the time and I, we moved to West Virginia. He's not from West Virginia, but my family is. We jumped out of corporate America. It was BK, before kids. And so we got my dad sort of set back up on his feet, set up for retirement. And on our way there, driving from Texas to West Virginia, my dad calls and he says, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, I haven't paid the last 5 years in taxes. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? I jumped out of a corporate job for this. So, like I said, we got him set up for retirement, and then we broke off on our own. And we started with one company, and over the course of a few years, we grew our portfolio to 6 companies. So, different sizes, different industries, lots of excitement, and lots of learning, right? We came from corporate America. So, we applied the processes and methodologies that we learned. And it was a great journey. And then, life happens, right? We sell the assets to one company, we have 5 companies left, we get divorced, we split up the companies. He has 4, I have 1. Sounds like it's unfair, but it's really not. And so we just continued on our entrepreneurial journey. So I have been a successful entrepreneur for over 20 years. Now that's not to say it didn't have hardships, right? At one point, I thought we were going to have to close the doors to one of our companies. And I did a Hail Mary, changed our business model, went wholesale. Thank God that worked. But I brought that journey of putting my retirement savings into opening businesses and praying to God that it is the right thing to do, right? Because you don't know. You don't know, and you're responsible for other people, and you're a contributor in your community. So my biggest thing that kept me up at night was worrying about how I'm going to keep the lights on and how I'm going to keep my employees paid. Because they rely on me for a job, right? They're the breadwinner for their family. So I have since opened up another business, which is Focus Strat, as a business strategist, and like I said, a certified behavioral consultant for business owners. So I take you through all of that journey to say, I have probably walked in your shoes, or walked very close to your shoes, whether you own a business, or whether you are a department head, or whether you work for somebody else, but you have a lot of responsibility in your area of the company. So how do we become leaders is what we do if we're not just a business owner. All right? So I want you to sort of keep that in mind. We're going to get through that. And I do thank you for taking your assessment. If there's anyone here that did not get their assessment or did not get their assessment done, you can go to this URL on your phone real quick and do like a real quick and easy. Once you have that, I can tell you what you are to get you through today. Because what we learned today with DISC is going to carry through all of our sessions for the rest of the 12 months, okay? All right, so be present in the moment. I'm not going to ask you to turn off your cell phones, but if you could, mute them. If you need to take a bio break, take it. No big deal. All right, and if you have questions, stop me. Let's engage. That's how we're going to have the most impact. This is the Vegas rule. What happens in here stays in here. All right? And we're going to be respectful, we're going to keep it confidential, and the more you engage and the more you share, the more impactful that will be for you and others. All right. Gave you a little bit about me. I then went on to get my master's degree in strategic leadership from University of Charleston. At the time of the split up of the companies, the state of West Virginia came to me and said, hey, we need you to be a business coach across 6 counties in West Virginia. If you know anything about West Virginia, it's a little bit economically poor. So not a lot of thriving economy throughout the state. And that's scary. That's really scary, especially for businesses who have been family businesses for a long time. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but we're going to cover a lot of topics, so I'm going to quickly go through because I need to get you acclimated to this. Our program format throughout the 12 months is you have a business planner there in front of you. We're going to be focusing on a different topic each month, all right? And what I will ask, you will be getting these binders at the next session. Inside, everybody should have a green card, okay? You can pop that inside of your binder when you get them. And everybody should have a business planner that looks like this. And I will be referring you back to the business planner each month at the end of the session, all right? Then we'll talk about sort of what happened in the previous month. We'll wrap up what are we going to focus on for the next month and what's our takeaways. I think you all, I don't know if you all got this calendar, but here's our different topics throughout the 12 months. If you can't see something and I'm in your way, just tell me to scooch over. So next month, on March 18th, we will be talking about work-life balance. Are we ever getting that one right? Definitely not. All right, quick icebreaker. You are welcome to wear your masks for this. It's up to you. I will ask you to use hand sanitizer before we do this and hand sanitizer afterwards. I need you all to grab a business card. Is there anyone here that did not bring their business card? Okay, if you did not, on your table is my business card with the SBDC business card. All right, so I have two cards. I have my Focus Trap business card and then my card through SBDC because I'm contracted through Butler and Morgan County SBDCs here in Ohio. Put your name on the back of my SBDC card, and we are going to gather in a circle. So we might need to go around a few tables. It's going to be a big circle. You're going to bring it in so close. For those of you familiar faces, I know that you've done this activity before, so don't give it away. For those of you new faces, I'll be curious to see how you'll react to this icebreaker. It's called the Right Family Vacation. Okay, go ahead and stand up. You got your card. You got your hand sanitizer. I'm going to stand up here. Yeah, so here you kind of start the circle here. You're going to have to fill in. You might have to put a few tables in between you.
I might sit for yourself.
Probably going to want to bring it in a little tighter because you will be handing your cards to the person next to you. All right, so just make sure that you can easily do that. Okay. If everybody on my side could take 2 steps to the left. Yeah, it'll just sort of tighten it in down there. There, okay. So I'm going to read you the story about the Right Family Vacation. Every time you hear the word right, you're going to pass your card to the right. Every time you hear the word left, you pass it to the left. Now I will read slow because this is a big group. You should end up with your own business card. Okay? Ready? Here we go. Once upon a time, Mrs. Wright and her 3 children, Joshua Wright, Abby Wright, and Caleb Wright, left their house to go on vacation. They left on a Monday, so Joshua left school for the Wright vacation. Abby left a whole plate of leftovers for her cat to eat during the Wright vacation. But Caleb, who left his friends behind, was the saddest of all. He also left behind the addresses of all the friends he wanted to write to while on vacation. This mistake left Caleb's friends in the dark. By the end of the week, all the rights wish they had never left. They still have a weekend left, but Mrs. Wright decided the right thing to do would be to return home right now. They left their vacation right away and arrived hungry. So they heated up some leftovers. The end. Do we have our cards? Who has their own card? Who has more than one card? Who has no cards? All right, that's good. It's just fun. It's a fun thing to do. That's a good way to break the ice. Now, what I will tell you about that and how does that relate to our disc assessments is, as soon as I said we're going to do an icebreaker, the eyes of this group are like, yes, an icebreaker. I was so waiting for that. The C's are like, oh. And the C's are definitely honed in on right, left, left, right, left. The eyes are like, what? The D's are like, I got something else to do. And the S's are like, no, we can do this, right? We can do this. So, that's how I related to DISC assessments. The DISC science was developed by Dr. William Marston, who you may recognize the name as the one who wrote the Wonder Woman comic books. But that's not the best thing he did. He actually invented the lie detector test back in the mid-1920s, 1926. And all of the other assessments, personality and behavioral assessments, are based on the DISC science. So this has been around forever, right? So Myers-Briggs, Strengths Finders, Wilson Social Styles, the one where you find your spirit animal, I'm not sure what that is. That's all based off of DISC science, okay? Which is the reason that I chose to be certified with DISC. It is also the only one that is legal for predictive hiring. So if you're looking at bringing employees on and you have a couple of candidates, this is the one that's legal for predictive hiring. All right, there's 4 quadrants here. Your D, all of my D's in the house, they're the ones that are dominant, right? We've got a budget, we've got a deadline, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. They're not up for chit chat, they don't care. They're not about details. They're very active. My I's, oh, by the way, my D's are only 3% of the population. My I's, those are the ones that can walk into a room and make friends with everybody, right? They're the ones that take an Uber ride, and by the end, the Uber driver and them are like the best friends ever, right? They're new BFFs. They are only 11% of the population. My S's, think slow and steady, right? They're all about the team. They do not like to make decisions. I's and S's are very relationship oriented, right? So S's will work harder each night of the week, and it helps the team achieve their goal at the end of the week. S's are also your grudge holders. They are also your gossip mongers. So if you have S's working for you, and you walk out of the room, they're probably talking about your shoes or something. Okay? Oops, let me go back. And C's. My C's are my analytical. Those are my number crunchers. They are my checklist, right? Hi, come on in. They're my checklist people. They want to know what they have to do right now. Don't bother me. Let me go get it done, right? They are 17% of the population, and they are perfectionists. They operate at a very high level of achievement, and they expect that of other people. So if you can imagine, these other 3 are a real disappointment to them because they just don't operate that level. So when we start to look at this, 3% are D's, 11% are I's, 69% of the population are S's. So chances are, if you're working with somebody, they very likely could be an S. And 17% are my C's. Now what's interesting about this is if you look at this half of the graph, my D's and I's are active, right? We are decision makers, we make decisions quickly, let's go, 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 go. We're multitaskers, and I will tell you, if you give a D something to do, they will get more done in 10 minutes than the rest of these 3 combined, okay? They can take more on their plate, they love a challenge. They want to be in charge. By the same token, the bottom half, my S's and C's, they're passive, right? They're not active. They're not quick to make decisions. They want information. And C's don't like to make decisions either, kind of like the S's, but if a C has to, it's all based on data. Absolute facts and figures. So it's not uncommon to see engineers, accountants, my bean counters. Those are very typically C's. If we look at the right side, my D's and C's, they're task oriented. They're all about what has to be done. They don't care about relationships. So don't walk into a C's office and be like, oh my gosh, do you know what my kid's game was like this weekend? Because he doesn't care, right? And the D's are like, I don't have time to listen to it. And don't ask me mine, because I'm not telling you. Okay, they're not about people. But my S's or my I's and S's, they're definitely people oriented. They have to have that personal connection. So you can imagine when COVID hit and everything was work from home and restricted, how difficult this was for I's and S's. My I's were probably the ones that were out not social distancing, right? They were the ones that were like having the bonfires outside, but we're outside. It's outside, right? And my S's don't like change, right? So if you tell an S we're moving offices, it probably shouldn't be tomorrow. It probably should be in 2 weeks because they have to internalize it. They got to analyze it. They got to focus on it. So give S's time to process. So you can imagine when the shutdown happened, they were like, oh my gosh, I gotta work from home, are you kidding me? I didn't have time to prepare. So they really had a hard time with that. Really had a hard time with that. They like structure. All right, so you have your green card. And you're in front of you, I was gonna say your binder, you have it, don't forget. It's the same thing, and what I want you to do, there's a marker on your table, or you can use your pen. What I want you to do is in this D section somewhere, I want you to put 3%. I don't care if you put it here, you put it here, put 3%. And actually, I'll write it for you. So if you put 3% at your D's, your I's, somewhere in that section, I want you to put 11%. Your S's, 69%. And your C's are 17%. So what's funny is my C's right now are adding all that up to see what makes up 100%. This is just a little bit of what I just told you, right? This is typical characteristics of my D, I, S, and C's, right? All right. In your DISC assessment, if you have your DISC assessment with you, I invite you to pull it out and turn to page 3. There are 3 graphs. The first one we look at is the middle graph. This is what we call your core self. These are everything that makes you you. It was the influence of your parents, your siblings, your church family, your coaches, your teachers, your neighbors, everything that makes you you. And in stressful situations, we tend to go back to our core self. So this particular client, he is a high S, C, I. That 3-letter combination, whatever way you want to combine it, can mask as a D. Good to know, right? They don't like to play in that space very long because, especially if they're a higher S, but they can mask as a D. Interestingly enough, sidebar, some other tidbits of information about the DISC styles. I's, and this is not to offend anyone here, okay, it's just good to know. I's, you put 2 I's together, they make friends really quick. So they're also prone to divorce rates. Right? Makes sense. The friendly. C's and D's. So if you have a DC combination or CD, but mostly the DC, they are most prone to bankruptcy. What? I know I said that to my husband because that's what he is. And he was like, why are you not? But they are, and I'll tell you why. Because the D's are quick to make decisions. They're very, very decisive. The C's like to gather information, and sometimes can go into analysis paralysis. So when you combine those two together, the C in them is gathering the information. The D in them says, I've got enough information, I'm making a decision, and I'm going with it. Right? So it's not uncommon to see entrepreneurs with a D quality, or something that masks as a D. Right? So this is just some good to know. So when we look at this graph number 2, this is the least likely to change. Makes sense, right? This is our core self. So we're least likely to change. When we look at graph number 1, that's our public self. This is how we think other people see us. And so we behave accordingly. So this graph is the most likely to change, right? How I act here may be different than how I act when I'm meeting one-on-one, which is different than how I act when I'm at home. So this is the most likely to change. Now what I want you to look at in your graph, and if we were sitting together, this is sort of what I would go through with you. If you see right here, this particular person, how they see themselves in terms of the S, the team environment, right? I'm all about the team. They typically are much higher naturally than what they think other people see them, right? They don't think other people see them as being as much of a team player. At the same time, their C, their attention to detail, all right, they naturally have some attention to detail. They don't think other people see them as having any detail attention at all. And then when we look at the I doesn't change too much. It pretty much stays the same. The D changes just a little bit. This person, this guy will actually raise his D just a scotch, but it's not high enough to register him as a D. The difference between these two graphs is graph number 3. That's our perceived self. This is how we see ourselves, and sometimes we're not even aware of these behaviors. So when you look at graph 2 and graph 3, the S are naturally, for this guy, right, he is naturally more of a team player than even what he sees himself to be. He doesn't see himself as much of a team player. At the same time, look at the C's. He doesn't see himself as being as detail-oriented as what he actually is, right? And then the I's don't change too much. It comes down a little bit with his perceived self, which is the I. That's when we walk into a room and make friends. And then the D, the dominant, it goes up just a scotch. So he thinks he's a little bit more dominant than what he really is. So that's how you read those 3 graphs. So what gives you your assessment result is graph number 3. It's the difference between the first and the second graph. Okay? So if you're a CS, it's because you have a difference that equals your CS as being above the midline. And that's what determines what's above the midline. What are those points above the midline? Okay. Interestingly enough, of the assessments that I received for our willpower group, we have 5 Ds in the room. Maybe they're not all here today, but we've got 5 Ds among us. We've got 14 I's, lots of friendly people. We've got 31 S's, lots of team players, and 24 C's. So how that breaks out is when I look at all my D's, 2 of them have a DC combination. Remember what I told you earlier about that bankruptcy thing? Now there's a lot more to this than just the surface level. This is just the first layer, okay? DIs, we've got 2 of those and 1 DIS. Now look at my I's. I've got an IC, an ICS, an IDC. So when we start to look at these, we have just a few of each type, but we're all really friendly, right? We've got someone who's friendly that pays attention to detail. We have someone who's friendly, pays attention to detail, and also is a team player. We have someone who's friendly but is dominant and pays attention to detail. So interesting ways that these break out. My S's, I have 11 SCs. I have lots of peacemakers and I have lots of advocates. And then my C's, peacemakers, my CS's. So we've got 14 CS's in the house. Interesting. When you're working with someone else, okay, the more we learn about ourselves, the more we start to learn about someone else. And that's important for communication. Because what's the cause of most of our problems when we relate with other people? It's communication, right? It's the breakdown in communication. So when we start to think, well, what is their biggest fear? D's are afraid of being taken advantage of. They just don't want to be taken advantage of. They will go all out, but don't take advantage of them. My I's, they're afraid of not being liked. Right? So as an I, if I'm giving a presentation and I get done, I don't walk off the stage and go, yeah, I think that was really impactful information. They got a lot of information. I walk off the stage and go, gosh, I hope they liked me. Oh, and then, yeah, I hope it was impactful information too. All right? My S's, loss of security. If you're a high S, you want a stable environment. If you think you might lose your job, your home life might change, the economy's going to change, your community's going to change, that uncertainty makes you very uncomfortable. That's one of your biggest fears. And for my C's, being criticized. And I had a gal say to me this morning, if somebody's going to criticize me, I don't want them to come at me. And that's someone who has C in them. Someone who has C in them, if you're going to criticize them, you better be very factual, right? Because they can fix that. If you're subjective and it's based on opinion and it's based on personality, that's not their realm. They don't know how to fix that. And so that's the fear of them. But they definitely don't want to be criticized by their data either, because remember, they're perfectionists. So they have checked their information 50 times before they hand it over. They don't want it to be wrong. And they probably had it done 2 weeks ago. When we're leading these types, right? So if you have these types in your community, in your home, in your work environment, in your church, things that you need to be aware of. If you are leading a D, they want to be in charge, right? You need to empower them to be in charge. And basically they want to be respected. So let them know they're in charge, they can go forward with it, they want to be respected, give them some different ways of doing what they do, right? Let them have the options. My eyes, well, like I said, they just want to be liked. So if you tell them that they're doing a good job, they can be part of that brainstorming because they love to think and talk, they want to continue to keep the progress going. If you're leading an I, that's the space they want to be in. And I use these toys here because if you remember this toy was like always moving with the sunlight, like always happy. That's your eyes. The D's, we back on the D's, perfection, right? You got to get this thing done before the time is done, right? That's your D's, definitely. Your S's, this is so my daughter. S's, they need, like I said, they need time to adjust. So if you're leading S's, give them time to adjust. They really want to know what's the process. They will follow a process, but they don't want to create a process. So give them the process, and they will follow it. And sometimes can even refine the process, but don't expect them to create the process. And remember this toy? You pull it along, right? That's an S. We're sort of going with each other. So when I tell my daughter, you need to go clean up your room, or you're not going to your friend's house, and then she's like, oh, I can't do that because now I've got like a 30-minute fit or 45 or whatever age she is at the time. So I have to say, come on, let's go clean your room. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do the bed first. We're going to pick up your clothes. We're going to put the stuff in the closet. Right? I'm giving her the steps, and then I eventually walk out. And she's doing it. Now, my youngest son, on the other hand, he is a D. He is all D. And I can say to him, I am pretty sure you can't get that room cleaned up in 10 minutes, which means you're not going out with your friends. Game on. Right? Game on. Watch this, Mom. I'm going to clean it. So there's a difference. I can push him. I can't push my daughter. I gotta pull her along, right? And my C's, they are all about preparation. So if you have C's that you are leading, allow them time to prepare because they want to make sure that they've crossed all their T's and dotted all their I's and make sure everything is perfect. They want everything clearly defined. Like I said, they're my checklist people. Have it on the checklist, I can check it off. And then don't micromanage them. Let them go do it. All right. We're going to get into the second, the 2D, the 3D, the 4D. And what I want to show you here is everything that I just discussed is sort of that iceberg above the water, right? It's the things we can observe, the things that we see. But there's so much more to people than just that, right? So it's kind of the difference between just getting an X-ray and getting the MRI. If you want the full scope, you do the other dimensions, right? You get the fourth dimension here. So the team's thinking styles, how you think if you are on a team. At this point, I'm going to pause. Does anyone have any questions about their assessment, the graphs, just the disc profile? Yes?
You said that you don't believe that this is changing all the time. You can't remind me when I took it myself.
So she just asked, it's a good question. She just asked, about the disc changing over time, and then over 20 years ago, hers has changed dramatically. And that's a great question. So the middle graph, going back to the core self, typically does not change. How you change in public or for yourself, that changes quite a bit. And yes, if I'm working with someone and they say, oh, I've taken a DISC assessment, it was 2 years ago. How much has happened in 2 years? Look what just happened in the last year, right? Our circumstances change. So that is going to fluctuate a little bit. And what changes are, well, let's think of our big life events, right? We have marriages and deaths and divorces and babies and moves and new jobs. And so that changes. We are going to change who we are, how we relate to our environment based on the circumstances of the time, right? So if we're starting a new job, we might be a little bit more of a go-getter versus we've been in the job for 20 years, we don't have to be as much of a go-getter, right? Or we just moved and we're in a new community. We're out making friends, especially for an eye. We're out making friends. So our eye is going to go up a little bit. So yeah, good question. And it does change, but the one that's going to change the most is graph number 1, your public self, which then, of course, in turn changes graph number 3, right? Because that's the end result. Any other questions on this disc? Nope. Okay. Second dimension. This is our disc team style. So if you turn to page 14 in your assessment, there are 5 different types, right? And you will see which one you are. There's the theorist, the executor, the analyzer, the manager, the strategist. So the theorist, that's sort of your visionary. So if you're on a team and you have the theorist, you're sort of that visionary. And if you're the strategist, you can have the vision, but you also figure out how to make changes in the process. So like if you're taking a trip and there's a detour, think of it like that. That's your strategist. Your executor is just that. They're the ones that's going to take the theorist's ideas and go make it happen, right? And then your analyzer is, of course, going to look at the steps. They're going to say, they may make suggestions on how to refine the process. Where can we make improvements to, how we're supporting customers. And then your manager is literally just that. So I want you to think of it in terms of, I've had clients say to me, okay, I'm thinking about promoting this person to be the general manager or to take over my business so that I can go to another place and start another business or open up another location. If you want that person to grow your business, it's probably not a manager, okay? If you have a chain of convenience stores and the process is the process and you need them to maintain status quo, that's your manager. They're perfect for that. But a manager is typically not one to grow the business. All right, so I just said how you think and function in a group, what your role is, and then of course, what are those preferences? So these are not abilities. It doesn't measure your ability. It just measures your preference. If you're on a team, what role do you want to be on that team? All right, and then this just sort of defines a little bit more about the different types, which I just basically said. So if you can get someone in a position that fulfills these roles, whatever role they want to be on your staff, that's going to increase their job satisfaction. Right? If somebody wants to be the executor and they want to go and implement the new ideas that the theorists came up with, then they are all about staying in that job. That's job satisfaction for them. Any questions on 2D and what you have there? So the one thing I will say is a lot of times you see a D or an I associated with theorists. It's very common to see those two together. All right, 3D. This gets down to now. I think of it as like layers of an iceberg. We're getting closer to the core, right? Remember, I'm going to date myself now. Remember the lollipop commercial with the owl? And he says, how many legs does it take to get to the center of the Tootsie Roll? We're getting to the center of the Tootsie Roll. All right. So when we start to look at values, this is those hidden motivators, right? What's your ideals? If you're on a team or you're in a team environment, what are those things that motivate you to contribute to the team environment? There's 4 things. There's loyalty, equality, personal freedom, and justice. So depending upon what yours is, This sort of speaks to that core. And these are not easily observable either. So while you might observe that D, I, S, and C, if you're looking to bring someone onto your staff, or you are working with a client that you're sort of guessing, okay, it could be a D, I, S, or C, once you start to get down into these levels here, that really tells you sort of what really speaks to their core, right? So personal freedom is, for instance, I have personal freedom in mind. And that basically means I don't want to be micromanaged. I like to be able to come and go and be creative and do what I do best in the way that I do it best, right? If you want me to grow your business, let me do it how I do it best. Don't tell me how you want me to grow your business. Just tell me what you want me to achieve. Is it a 35% revenue gain in the first 3 months? What is that? And then I'll go do it. If I have justice, this is sort of, I want everybody to have a win-win situation, right? At the end of the day, we all need to have a win-win. That's typically your justice, all right? This will sort of identify out a little more for you on each style. Let's see. Yeah, the loyalty, that's sort of responsible living, right? It's serving others. And the equality, respect and tolerance, fairness to all. So what happens now if we're on a team and the other team members don't have the same values that we do? That makes it a little tough, doesn't it? I want somebody to have the same values as me, but you know that's not realistic. So when we talk about diversity in the workplace and workplace conflict, a lot of times it stems from here, because we're not appreciating or accepting or even recognizing that there are these other team values, and they're all important when you're on a team. And when you're creating a team, you must have all of those on there. You can't have the same type, because then our boat that we're all rowing in the same direction is going to go in circles, right? But if we all have oars on either side, and we've got some in the front and some in the back, now we're cooking with gas, right? We're getting somewhere. So you got to have each kind. All right. The next page, page 20 in your assessment. This is sort of, if you are the leader on the team, this is where your strength would be. So this guy in particular, he is, where is he? He is processing, persisting, and relating. It looks like relating might be a little higher than persisting. There's a quick description. I'm not going to go through all of it, but in this particular instance, if he's processing, persisting, and relating, as far as processing, he wants to be really hands-on with his team. He's a leader, but he's going to be down in the ditches with his team. Or the persisting, so he definitely can work through problems. He doesn't get sidetracked, right? Persistence, perseverance, I'm going to get through this. Stays focused. And then the relating. So you know that he's going to be able to reach out. If he's got to get a project done, he's going to reach out. He's going to get involved, whoever needs to get involved, and he's going to get it done. Any questions on the strengths of leadership? Yes. No, I don't have that yet, but that's a great question. So she asked, do I know, if I go back to this, do I know what percentage of the population is each of these? And the answer is no, I have not gotten that information yet, but that's a great question, and I'm hoping they do come out with that, because I think that would be really helpful. It's such a C question. I want percentages. Like, I need to know how this breaks out. The eyes are like, ooh, I wonder which one I am. I have all of them. Okay, good question. Any other questions on any of that so far? Okay, I'm trying to keep an interest eye on our time here. All right, last one, Behavioral Attitudes Index. This is the newest thing that People Keys has added to their lineup. And I want you to understand this 2D, 3D, 4D levels, they are complementary to the DISC. They're not just some standalone assessment, right? They are now, when we look at that, what's under the iceberg, that lowest level. Now we've got to the Tootsie Center, right? This is the good stuff. So it breaks it out into these different, so they call it I speak. We have your inner awareness, we have your social humanitarian, your power political, your economic tangible, your artistic and innovative, and your knowledge and proficiency. So where do you fall in that? I wish Lindsay was here today. Sean here? Sean is here. Okay, Sean is there in the back. So Optimize Senior Living, I asked Lindsay if I could use their results for some of this. When I pull up their team, and I did this for the management staff over there. When I looked at everybody, I'm like, oh, there's a lot there that are sort of the same. Right, they're sort of the same, but my two that stick out is Lindsay's my power political, right? She wants, my power political is I want to have influence and be a catalyst for change, right? And I want to constantly move up. That's my power political. And Victoria, she's my knowledge proficiency. Those are the two differences out throughout the whole team. Those are the only two that are like that are different. Knowledge proficiency is, think of your lifelong learner. I always constantly want to learn. And I want to learn as much as I can about the things that interest me. Not because I want to be a teacher, but just because I love learning, right? My social humanitarian, they want to help others, right? They're about working with others, think of the altruism, right? Being in service. And my inner awareness spiritual, this isn't necessarily do you go to church every Sunday. I mean, it can manifest in that way. But this is, I have a purpose, and there is a higher calling for me. And there's other things that we should be elevating in our world. And I should be helping others, right? So it's that sort of, that inner calling. And then, let's see what else, economic tangible. So a lot of times this is confused with, I just want to go out and make a lot of money. No. Typically, your economic tangible, they want to make money, more money, because it's a means to an end, because I can take my family on vacation, because I can put more money in my kids' college savings account, because we can get our house paid off, right? So they are driven by making more money because they want to be able to do these other things. That's typically your economic tangible. Let's see what else. Okay, so there's just that quick, that's on page 27. It'll break it all out as far as what each one means. Some other things that sort of feed into that. Now this, I love this graph. So on this graph, this is page 32 of your assessment. I always like to see where people fall in this graph. So for instance, this guy, he is high on economic tangible and high on his knowledge proficiency. Now, I could have somebody else who has those same highest traits, but they may be back here, but it's still their highest traits. This guy's like way out here. Like he is big time driven by money. Big time. And of course, he wants to be the smartest guy in the room. So, I love to see these graphs after I look at what your I speak is. All right, so when we look at these, all of these graphs, these are everything we just went over, right? These are our first three graphs. Our core self, our public self, our perceived self. But it associates point values. So you can sort of see where they fall. All right, here's our team's focus, our work values, and our behavioral attitudes index. Road trip. We're going to do that one here in a second. Do you have any questions on any of these graphs? And I am happy to go over your individual assessments with you. Just send me an email, and we'll set up some time to go through them in more detail if you want. I have another in that one. So, it's a good question, so I'm glad you brought that up. So she just says some of it, in her overall assessment, some of it seems to contradict. And it can, and that's why I like to sit down and go through the actual assessment with you, because most people try to relate some of this stuff to the DISC, right? Well, if I'm dominant and I'm an I and I'm active, I may be something more of a social humanitarian, right? And so that tends to slow down, and I'm not active, and I'm all about helping others. But the DI doesn't indicate that. that's because we're looking at a deeper level. So how then, if I'm social humanitarian, how then would I use my DI? So how I use my DI in that sentence would be that I'm dominant, but that means I'm probably going to be in charge of a project or a community event that's going to help the community, right? Versus if I'm an S, I'm going to be involved in that same project, but I'm not going to be in charge of it. Does that make sense? It's a great question. So it's just how do you use your DISC as it relates to these other layers? Any other questions? All right, cool. We're going to do a road trip activity. Stand up. I need all of my Ds. Go ahead and use your hand sanitizer too, please. I need my Ds over here with a chair that says D. I need my I's. That chair back there, you don't have a single chair, but there's an I on it. My S's are up here in this front left corner. And my C's are in the back corner. That's okay. You're an I. D-I-S-C. Hey, Kristen, if I could ask you to shut that off and erase that real quick. Thank you. That's your yellow. So you're back there. What I need each of my groups to do, pick one person from your group that is going to take the road trip for your group. Okay, so I'll let you figure out who that's going to be. Yeah. So inquirer is well, if you go back to, actually let's go back to here. Whoops. Yeah, let's go back to here. So on your S and which inquirer, your C. Are you an SC? This one's right here. You're an SDC, okay, so that's what applies. So you're primarily an S first. So you're gonna go with Okay. Do we have, does anybody have their card keys handy? Oh, I've got mine. Never mind. Let me grab mine. Okay, if you have your person, your one person that's going to represent your group, I want you to bring your chair and bring it up to the stage. And Shauna, you can't give this away. Yep, take your chair up on the stage. All right. We got our 4 people? All right, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to arrange our car. This is our car. Tina, have you done this one? You haven't done this one. Okay. All right. This is our car. I need my D, I, S, and C's. You are going to take a road trip. And the rest of you guys are going to observe behavior. Now, part of this is role play. I know it's uncomfortable, isn't it? She did exactly what I was just literally going to do this. I was going to be like, all right, there's the keys to my Bugatti. It's not really Bugatti. And I want you guys to get in your car. And you don't have to sit. I was going to say, you don't have to sit in your seat. My seats are. My seats are going to be like, what's in the seat? Okay, now before we start this road trip, you guys are going to observe behavior, and I want you guys to really be on this road trip, okay? You're taking the Bugatti to Florida. You're leaving here today, right now, and I gotta set my timer. And you are gonna take this road trip together. Ready? Go.
Who's got the map?
Not me. And I clicked the card before we left.
Awesome. Let's go.
So what do you want to listen to? What's first? What's on the radio? No? Okay. I'll do it.
Yes, we do, of course. And we will not stop you to pee.
Sure. Out of out. Is there a plan? Like where are we going?
We're just following the GPS. We're going to Florida.
Oh, cool.
I booked us a room. And we have reservations for dinner later, so we cannot stop. We want to get there.
Are there drinks or can I turn down?
Of course. We are not.
What?
We have a deadline to get there.
Time's dinner. We're gonna make it.
We are.
We can at least stop and have a girls' drink. No.
I can be convinced for that. We can keep our reservation.
You have 1 minute to get to Florida.
We're going to follow ways, but not always business there. Dinner. Drinks.
You guys here?
I packed for the beach. I have a bag, I have an umbrella, I have a chair, I have sunscreen, 4 good novels to read.
I brought the radio and drinks.
Yeah, there's no book coming with me.
Okay, good. Good. What did you guys observe? Dee being in charge. She did it before I could even get it out of my mouth. She's like, I'm driving, right? And that is usually what happens. The Dee's like, I'm driving, get back. What else? What else did you guys observe?
S is just along for the ride.
S is along for the ride. S is there. She's part of the girls' trip, right? It's a team day.
Our C is very nervous. She's not sure about this.
Why do you say that?
She's got everything planned, like the book, the sunscreen. We're like, we don't need that. We're just gonna get there. We'll figure it out when we get there.
Yep.
So, yes, and the map, the paper map.
I never leave my house for vacation, that my house is perfectly clean when I leave. So when I come back in the car,
She said when she leaves for vacation, her house is always clean, and when she comes back, the car gets immediately cleaned. What else did you guys observe? It's all about the fun. She is all like drinks, right? Yeah, like you and your hall, you get like the people over here. Go girl. What else?
I definitely was trying to engage everybody in the car together. What kind
Yes.
of music, what kind of snacks, what would you like? Just trying to pull all the personalities into, just having the experience.
Yes.
Is
Yes.
what I observed.
She said she was trying to sort of engage everyone, right? The snacks, the music. Good. What else?
He's taking care of business. I've got the sunscreen covered. I'm taking care of people. I'm the caregiver for you guys don't have your chairs, but I got chairs.
Yeah.
I got extra books to take,
Exactly. She was saying that the C has got sort of everything taken care of, right? Checking off the list. Got the chairs, got the sunscreen, got the novels, check. And this is usually what happens, right? So if you think about this in your work environment, Why would you not want one of each kind on your team? You gotta have somebody that drives the project. You gotta have somebody that keeps the team going. Let's go, we got this, right? She's not about details, but we are gonna have fun. We've got the S, right? The S is making sure, we're all together. Typically the S is like, okay, so I've also got, I've got blankets for everybody, although Dana said that, but she has some S in her. She's a CS. So the S is like, I got everything taken care of. And the C's, right? The C's are all about the details, right? I filled the car with gas. She said, I filled the car with gas. They probably keep the tires, right? Filled all the fluids. Made sure everything's ready to go. And probably they programmed the GPS. So you notice the D is all about, we're not stopping to pee. We got to get there, right? Hanging out the window. And so because she's playing pole position, right? Everybody else on the road is a competitor in pole position.
Oh, you know it.
Right? And don't you hate it when you go through the toll booth and you're like, oh, I am the first one out, right? Right? I'm on the turnpike, here we go. That's a D. That is totally a D.
I said my GPS going to work every day to see if I can be.
See? So typically what the C will do is they'll say to the D, actually, D, we can stop. I've already programmed it in the GPS. We can make 3 stops for 2.8 minutes. That'll give us time to pee, grab a quick drink, get in the car, we can go. And we can still make it there in time. Now, if I had a carload full of D's, they would be like, no, I'm driving. Yeah, I'm driving, right? The I's would never make it out of the parking lot. They're just going to drive out of the parking lot, right? Come on, driving, because we are on a journey, right? The S is going to be like, okay, I brought snacks, and you bring the blankets, and you've got the eye shades, right? And the C is the C's, and the S's and C's usually always sit in the back, right? The I's are always like, shut up, right? And the C's are like, okay, the car's clean, right? We got air in the tires. So if you have each one of these people types on your team, you have a well-balanced team, right? The C's, they're going to have to do like rock, paper, scissors because nobody really wants to drive. Oh, and they're probably going to drive a Prius and it's going to be just under the speed limit, right? Because they're really fuel efficient. Okay, thanks you guys. Give them a hand. Okay, you guys can sit down. That was great. I appreciate you guys observing and engaging. I was waiting for that question. I'll say it. I was curious who was going to ask me that. Okay. Not yet. Okay. So fun stuff there, and I always like to do that with this company. Typically, the same thing happens. We come to you that are a little bit different, but typically it's the same behavior, and we observe the same thing in our work environments, right? Same thing. So when you start to look at your type, the way this wheel works is that, if you are beside the next one, you can relate easier to that one, right? And as you start to come in the sort of pie, right, where this, and then we sort of narrow it down, we have the ID because it's next to the DI, the IDS because it's next to the DIC, and the ISC next to the SIC. So those in terms of relating, relate easier. And of course, the more you come in, the easier it relates. So there's not as much of a gap in terms of relating to each other from here to here. You guys see that? I know I'm like sort of in front of it. Stay on this side. From here to here, or here to here. But there's a much bigger gap in relating from here to here, or from here to here. So the I's, I can't tell you that story yet because I'll give it away. Okay, never mind. Remind me in a second to tell you my work story, okay? So if you are working or relating or volunteering, married to, parenting, whatever, another type, where do they fit in this wheel? And how do you need to adapt your style or your delivery of communication so that the other style can receive that in the most impactful way? That's really what it comes down to. So whether we're talking about time management, or we're talking about leadership, or we're talking about building effective teams, or networking, all of this comes into play. There's nothing that we do that this doesn't have an impact on it. So that's why I try to spend so much time educating you, because it's so incredibly impactful. And if you're a business owner or you're a department head that you have to hire staff, why would you not want to know this about your team? Right? This is like the next best thing to a crystal ball. Who's on your team and who's not on your team? So if you're going to bring people on your team, how do you fill that gap? What is that gap? So, one of you should ask. So let me go to that. I think I'm running out of battery here on my little clicker. Okay, Kristen, if you would pull that back down, and then we'll shut that off. And I'll go ahead. All right, so again, Optimized Senior Living. This was all of their styles. Okay? So I mapped it all out for them. All of their DISC styles, what's their style called, their teams' behaviors, their values, their leadership styles, and their behavioral attitudes index. And the things that are highlighted are the things that are different about their team. What's interesting to me is they have almost a perfectly balanced team. And I rarely see this. They have almost equal amounts. So if you are a business owner, or you are at the head of a department and you're going to be hiring, and you see this as your team right now, where are you going to bring somebody on? Where are they going to fit? And probably, depending upon the role that you need to fill, right, would be an I or a C, because you have more Ds and S's. But it depends on then, what's their team style? What's their values? What's their behavioral attitudes index? And I'll tell you, if you can create a position that BAI is met, that person will never leave you. And you will never leave that company if you have that for you. Because that speaks to your most core self, right? All right. So, anytime you can create a balanced team, that will be the most impactful for your organization. Then we start to look at, and this is called the group dynamics report, right? So if you have everybody take an assessment, we can then pull a group dynamics report. And now, as a group, they are an SD. So what that tells me is that they are all about the team, right? The management staff is all about the team. And they're dominant. They sort of persevere. They get going. They do things. What that also tells me is that their I and their C is very low. So, let's see if I got both. Yeah, I do. Okay, so when I look at them under stress, this is their natural. This is them under stress. This is your brain on drugs now. This is them under stress. So what happens now when that management team is under stress, their S goes up, right? So they're definitely more about the team. If you're not messing with my family. And their D goes up. They get a lot more dominant. But their I and their C doesn't. So if I am a family member coming in to look at putting my loved one there, they're probably not going to be too welcoming at the door based on this graph, right? So how do I make them aware that we need to bring our friendliness up, right? Welcome those that are coming through the door. And our attention to detail. We're probably letting some things fall through the cracks, so we probably need to refine our process a little more so that we can be more efficient and more financially impactful to the organization. Now, if this were a person, all right, and they had this kind of a graph, I would be very concerned about this person because they've got 2 above and 2 below. And when you have that graph, that means they are going through a change of some sort. They're under some sort of stress. If I have someone that is sort of just right on the midline, and this style as well, when it's this close, I would want to be careful that that person could be prone to depression, right? So definitely some good to knows there. All right, and then as a team. So sort of the BAI index, but for the team. And where do they fall, right? How far out on that chart are they? Well, we definitely know that they're collaborating and they're persistent, which goes right in line with their S and their D. Takeaways. When we are communicating, can't lose it if I won't have my Bugatti. When we are communicating with each other, The more we start to learn about ourselves, the more we can start to learn about each other. The more we learn about each other, the more we can empower each other to lead in different ways. And the only way for us to become truly, truly empowered is to empower someone else. Right? That creates the opportunity. That is a way that we can advocate for each other. So if there's a little girl that's in your church, in your neighborhood, someone you see in the grocery store, how can you create an opportunity for them to become empowered? And it can be the smallest thing. But the only way we're going to do that is to not only know what we are, but start to figure out what somebody else might be, so we know how to interact with them. All right, you have surveys that you got when you came in the door. There's a survey form, and there's a tell me more form. I look at these very closely. As a way of helping me grow my business, I want to know how I can change the delivery of the content that I'm providing you, and what new content I can provide for you. You can remain anonymous, that's fine. I would ask that you put those forms on the table as you walk out the door, and I will collect those. If you have something, tell me more, and there's things that you want to know more about, please put your name and contact information. I've had people give them to me and they're blank, and I don't know who it is. As well, you have, as I mentioned, you can have, if you want to schedule a follow-up meeting with me to go over more of your DISC assessments, we can certainly do that. You also have a business planner book in front of you. So if you wouldn't mind pulling that out before you do your surveys. Page 3, come on up here. All right, page 3. This is the start of your 30-day goal. Each time we meet, I want you to write one goal that you're going to work on for the next 30 days until we meet again, as it pertains to today's topic. Okay? As well, if you go to page 9 and 10, and this is also in your DISC assessments, page 9 and 10, this is an action plan. So page 9, I want you to think of it as something that you can actually take the one from your DISC assessment and give that to someone that you trust, your spouse, your sibling, best friend, boss, whatever. Give that to someone else that you trust. You fill out the one on page 9. And this is about you. Kind of think of it as a thumbs up, thumbs down. You get a thumbs up on this, you get a thumbs down on that. And then where do you compare with the person that you gave it to? Do you both see yourself with the same thumbs up and the same thumbs down? Or do they see you with the thumbs down that you're like, ooh, I wasn't aware of that. I need to work on that. And then you go to page 10. And this is sort of goes along with that 30-day goal. What are 3 things that you want to do to improve on the things that you found out from page 9? Okay? So I'm going to ask you to do that before our next session. And then I'm going to ask whoever wants to share what they've learned, what they've worked on in the progress. We're going to do that to kick off the next session. Okay? All right, so. Questions? Concerns? Yes. Yeah. So page 9 in she's asking what is it that you're supposed to give to someone else. So page 9 in your planner is also in your DISC assessment. I shouldn't put what page number that was in your DISC assessment. It's sort of towards the middle. Yes, okay, so it's going to be 24 and 25. So page 24 in your DISC assessment is the page that you can give to somebody else. And then you can do page 9 in your book. Questions? Yes. Okay, second person has asked me that. All right, let me do this. I'm actually going to pull it up on my computer because I started keeping these in a spreadsheet. She wants to know what I am. So, well, let me ask you this before I pull it up. What do you think I am? Who says I'm a high D? Show of hands. Who says I'm a high I? Show of hands. Who says I'm a high S? Not as many. I'm not a team player. Who says I'm a C? A couple of those. You guys don't think I have attention to detail? I'll show you what I am. We should like take that. Sorry. You're going to see everything on my computer. Don't look. Where am I? Here we go. I think it's bigger. Hold on. Now, some of these are not from an actual disc. I still kept them in here, right? So there's the strengths finders. I couldn't find my Myers-Briggs one. So, in 2018, I took disc, and I was starting a new job. And so I ranked as an SIC, right? I want to make sure I'm a team player. In February of 2019, I started ranking as a high I, C, S. Still in that same job, but they changed my job. And I had to start paying a little more. I had to track progress of my clients. My clients were business owners, who also happened to be franchisees. So I worked for a franchise network. And as you can imagine, franchises want to know numbers. So I had to start tracking numbers. In April of that same year, I then became an IS. Now, I will say that, well, this one was just a 4D. It didn't go any deeper than that. Didn't do the other levels. And then this one is the group dynamics report that I was in with our team. And it just so happened that our team, the management team, there were 4 of us. It was 2 guys and 2 girls. And it just so happened that the 2 girls happened to be alike and the 2 guys happened to be alike. And it wasn't until we did that, we would go into meetings and we had completely different, it's almost like guys against the girls. But then when we did the group dynamics, we were like, wow, it doesn't have anything to do with guys against the girls. It's just because we happen to be alike and they happen to be alike, right? So it shed a whole new light on that. The strengths finders, they've changed the name of it now. It's called Gallup. Gallup put them strengths, but that's strengths finders. So the WOO, which is basically like an I, remember I told you it's all based off of this, and then sort of where they fall according to the different values and styles. And then, let's see, I'm trying to read it from the side here. Cloverleaf does a disc, but they don't go into the deeper styles. So I came out as a high I there. And then, of course, in June of 2020, this is past June, I did one, and I came out as an ID. Again, working with business owners, but those business owners were all construction industry. So, as you can imagine, I have to bring my D up a little bit, right? I get a little more dominant. And then, of course, the last 2, those were just, I was testing the freebie ones, which I don't like, but for purposes of getting through an easy like lunch and learn or something like that. If you did the lunch and learn with me through Lebanon Chamber a few months back, we did the freebie one. I do not recommend making any sort of work environment decisions based on those, ever. But anyways, I came out as ISD and IDS, both taken on the same day, one right after the other. So, does any of that surprise anybody? That that's my style? I will also tell you that your eyes are the ones who are usually late. They're fashionably late. So I had plans to be here at 6 this morning, and I texted Kristen and Angie, and I said, it's going to be 6:15. Now, was I late for our gathering? No. But I was late according to the time that I had set to be here. And I just know that about myself. So I try to make sure that I'm building that cushion in. Let me go back to my contact info. I do have business cards on the table, guys. Feel free to take. So, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I love to connect with folks. if you got any nugget of information today that was useful, please, I ask, if you would write a recommendation for me on LinkedIn. That helps me grow my business. It helps others know how I work with crowds or clients or one-on-ones or whatever that is. If it's topics that you like, you feel like the delivery was impactful, that helps me grow my business. So I would ask, if there was something that you didn't find useful or wasn't clear, I ask that you give me the opportunity to clarify that for you. Any other questions? Yes?
What type do you see that is more likely to advance these?
She asked, what type do I see that's more likely to be advanced and promoted? It's not any particular type, right? It's not, on the surface level, it's not the DIS or C, right? It's usually how the lower levels are fulfilled. So if those lower levels are fulfilled, you are going to be more effective. If you're more effective, you're going to be making an impact, and that will get you promoted. Now, if I'm an accountant, and I'm in an accounting firm, or I work as an accountant for a larger company, and I'm a C, my Cs don't necessarily stand up and say, hey, I want to be promoted, right? But they do give very good work, very precise. So that in and of itself, in that kind of environment, will get them promoted. My eyes are like, oh, I could do that. D's are like, oh, you are going to promote me. You are so going to promote me. S's, you will not ask to be promoted. They just want to be there to help the team. So they really need somebody else to advocate for them. So if you know that you are an S and you want to be promoted, you do have to step out of that box a little bit and let your superior know that you are interested in advancing and what else can you take on to help the team. And that feels uncomfortable. But that's okay. Those are good questions. Other questions? Funny stories, weekend plans. Okay. Thank you guys. This was great. I really appreciate you letting me spend this morning with you, and I'm really looking forward to next month.